On the other side, so the team that obviously did the throwing, G2, there's another team that, despite the fact that, like, they've locked in the playoffs and that, like, it's still not that impressive a split thus far. Like, even if they win a couple of games on the way out, like, I am a bit underwhelmed by this G2 because the problem I have is this, Dom, is if it had just been that, like, fundamentally certain players had failed and the team wasn't that good, like, fair enough, I could take that, like, oh, that's breaking the team structure. But as far as I can tell, they've gotten almost everything they wanted out of the players who joined the team. It's just that the team itself just isn't that fire. You know what I mean? Like no one's really shitting the bed. Like, as I've said on most of the past episodes, as much as, like, I had no expectation for Flackid, he's actually pretty decent. It seems like he knows what he does within this team, at least. Like, he knows how to make the champions he picks works. He knows definitely within the game he's not trying to be some, like, fucking ego carry or something. So I think, like, the team structure works. Most of the players are still pretty good. I won't do the whole caps things. We've done that about 50 times now. We'll wait and see on that one. Obviously, that hasn't really changed. Spoiler. So yeah, it's true. We're still sort of waiting for caps to properly arrive and, like, turn the engine on, as it were. But the rest of the team's fine. It's just like I say, it's just not that great a team, Dom. Like, I don't really know what people hope for at this point.
It's not that great. I will call out the Silas play that ended the game versus BDS. I mean, it was BDS, right? Like, it's not.
Oh, that looked good. I'll say, Dom, because I saw people commenting where they were like, "Oh my god, this is like when Caps was versus Gen G." I was like, "Yeah, well, you see the problem there, don't you? Because it's Gen G as opposed to BDS. Like, does anyone see why? Listen, I don't want to be one of those redditors, Dom, who's like, but he was already up 4 kills, and the guy used his ult. Like, I'm not being that guy, but, like, you can see how Gen G isn't really BDS, is it? Like. Yeah, I know you mean. Listen, it looked good. If I take the nameplates off, I'll give you that. It looked sick. I'll give you that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's what more for me is, like, it doesn't really matter who his opponents are so much in terms of, like, we haven't seen him actually, like, play the edge of his champions like that. Like, you've never seen him in recent games look so controlled where he's like, oh, yes. Like, I just know this situation. It looked like he'd played that situation a million times. Like, he knows that there's no chance of him ever dying there as Silas and just to, like, go in what needs to be done to hit. It's like that old famous Carlos play, Ocelot play, the Cassio play in that first I think it was what was it? It was Cologne. I think it was like an IM Cologne where he played Cassio. He got that 1v2 kill or 1v2 kills as Cassio versus TSM, and he was like, yeah, as soon as the trade started, all I was waiting for was, like, am I gonna hit the second Q? If I hit the second Q, then I end up getting, like, the double kill. It was like that where you saw, like, Caps where he was just in the zone. It's like, okay, all I have to do is, like, land the second chain. As long as I hit the second chain, that's killing the whole team right there. So I will give him credit for that. That was that did have nice. Like,
yeah.
It gave you a little bit of, like, oh, okay, that's the guy I remember. That's the guy that I wanted to see in there. But I mean, I think the biggest issue with G2 is, like, their throw versus Misfits is kind of like a microcosm of their entire season. Like, they don't feel in control when they're ahead. They don't feel like they are going to just choke you out the same way that real top teams do. Like, that's the thing that I like about Fnatic. Fnatic has had a bunch of dodgy games. I mean, they lost to Astralis as well. And I mean, they just don't look, like, super polished. But when Fnatic plays a good game, like when they have a game where they're in control, I'm thinking about, like, the first game this week where Razor was playing Diana. He played really well that game.
Yes.
They just look like they know how to win the game. Like, it's like, oh no, everything's already done. Like, we're just ahead. It's done. It doesn't feel like that with G2. Think about the first Misfits game. They almost had the Elder throw again this season, the first time that they played Misfits. So G2 to me is a team that I can't be super confident in because I don't actually believe that they know how to leverage leads efficiently. It feels like a lot of the times they need really big leads to be able to win. Whereas, like, other teams, I think can win from much more, like, neutral positions in the game. Just by playing the map better. So I think my biggest issue with G2 is not really, like, a player thing. I think all the players are really good. It's just that they just don't seem to, like, be able to read these situations ahead of time. And it makes me feel like when they're in these games, what is their communication like? What's their prep like?
Yes.
How do they view the game, like, when they're going into one of these late Drake fights? Are they calling the proper things? It makes me feel like there's some, like, deficiencies in how the team operates around, like, a Soul or a Baron or, a late game push. Like, do they track everything that needs to be tracked? Are they able to look across and read exactly where the key flashes are, what their win conditions for the fight are, if they need to, like, flank, or do they need to, like, stop somebody on a flank? Like, they don't accurately determine what's going to win or lose these situations. And I think, to me, that's, like, the biggest issue that I see.
Yeah, I would actually say, because as I said, to me, I don't really think anyone, like, based on expectations relative to their role, I don't think anyone in G2 is actually playing badly. Like, they mostly look like they're pretty good, minus the caps one I said, which is mainly about name value and past seasons. So I have to say, the same sort of sentiment comes from me, which is the first thing I think of when I look at this team is, like, I really wonder what the shot calling setup in this team is. Like, it does look like it's pretty suspect. Like, to me, it looks like it's just very simplistic. Because when you look at their coach, who I notice never gets brought up in these discussions, so they brought in Dylan Falco, right? Who's a guy where I've said, if you look at him, basically, the problem with his career is simple. It goes like this. The narrative part of his career got fucked when Youngbuck joined, because Youngbuck joined in a way where, even though Youngbuck joined as sort of like, if you remember, it was like head of esports or something, and technically Dylan Court was still like the head coach or whatever. But because the first year that Dylan Falco was there was the first year of caps, and that was when it wasn't really that fucking super duper sick or whatever, it makes people in their brain think, right, it was Dylan Falco was also like part of why Fnatic like wasn't quite the best, and then Youngbuck came in because obviously he won all the times in G2, and they were like, so then Youngbuck's like the real reason they sort of like won it. So I noticed basically no one really gives Dylan Falco his props on the Fnatic one, but then for me, you can't argue with the other teams he was in. You go look at the talent he was working with on paper in some of those Schalke lineups, like, mate, he's working for real, obviously the pun included, he's working miracles. Like, look how many times he had those teams either like a contender or a playoff team, or they sometimes would have like one player to play around, like upset, but you could just find a way to make it work, still set up the right game states. The problem is this, right? I do think he's a pretty good coach, but I also think that like you are somewhat limited as a coach based on the personnel you have. This is what every sports coach will tell you. It's like, at the end of the day, for all I know, Dylan Falco might have the most genius way ever to play the game, but if you can't do it, like if the people can't execute it, this happens all the time in my native game of Counter-Strike, Dom. You get people who think that like one of the leaders isn't a great tactician or something, but what you might not know is maybe in his team he has like a rookie who just doesn't have the experience to know what they're doing. He has some star player who's like super egotistical and wants to do his own thing, and then maybe like it's something really nuanced that you might need to do in a tactic. You know, there's no one who can do it but him maybe, so he's super limited as to what he can do, what he can call. Meanwhile, another guy's got all the arsenal, all the weapons, all, you know, he can call anything he wants. He can make you look like he's the mastermind. So that's one thing I do worry about in this team, is like I don't really know sort of who the captain of this team is. Like, who's the head of the snake? Like, I don't think there is one, dude. And I have to say, this has always been a point of contention for me over the years. Obviously, yeah, it's not like we're talking about like a dictator. We're not having one player who only is the one who speaks and talks. But if you notice these teams where it's sort of like, oh, we all sort of pitch in and we got a little like committee, it's like they're never that good. It's almost never those teams are the best. There's a reason why you have players, you know, the Core JJs of the world, the Perks of the world, that they just, every team, it's like they automatically end up being the captain. It's like you'd be an idiot not to make these guys the captain. So I think that's what they're lacking, dude. Like, I'd say I've said on the past ones, for me, the problem with this team is that they're a good team, but they just don't have any killer instinct. I don't really know why they would like win LEC, you know. I can't even pick a player who could overperform at this point. Like, I still don't think they'd win.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think their most exciting players this split for me have been Targamas and Broken Blade, which is kind of weird that like the top of support are doing really well, but it seems like BB has been like shitting. I mean, before they have this massive throw, like BB solo killing here 3 times in the fucking game, like that it's looking pretty doomed. And then I feel like Targamas actually has like really good early game. Like it feels like he knows exactly what he needs to do. Mega. To get his team ahead, whatever it is. I think the problem is that like they don't have so when you listen to old G2 voice comms, right? It was always that Jankos like knew how to play the situation, and then you'd have like Perks be like the voice of reason. It'd be almost like the out of game shit where he would just be like, guys, like really, like this is the only way we can lose the game. Just don't go for this, and like just go for like he would recenter the team on like what the team needed to do to win, which I think is really important. I don't think that they like have that guy who's gonna step up and, you know, like lead them to the actual victory when they're there, outside of like like this guy's no flash, all right, I think we can probably like walk in here, like instead of that, like you need somebody who's gonna be like, okay, like look, fuck whatever they're doing, this is what we need to do right now, we're gonna win the game. Like I think they need somebody to like refocus them, and I don't know who would be that on this team, because it feels like Targamas probably has a decent amount of the like early game shot calling in his like, you know, control, but then when you go into the mid to late game, who's going to be that guy that's going to like complement him and actually, you know, set up the situations and just make the team feel like everything's under control. It feels like they always, I mean, part of the reason why they throw is when you look at them in these games, they look a little bit confused. Like it feels like even when you watch their voice comms, which I'm pretty sure I've watched all their voice comms, like even they show most of the key fights, and a lot of the times it doesn't feel like they really know like like especially in their losses, how the fight is going. It's just, it feels like, oh, I'm going in here. Oh, I think I'm dead. Oh, okay, I'm TPing. Like, I guess we can't fight. Just try to live. Like that's like their entire voice comes like, what the fuck? That didn't seem like control. That didn't seem like you understood what was going on, or like you were aware of what your teammates were doing. So I mean, I don't really know how to change this necessarily. Like in the immediate future, I think it's something that's really hard to fix. But yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't look. You don't have the faith in G2 when they have a lead that you have in Fnatic.
Oh, no
right
way.
now. So
I'd even say as well, there's another aspect that no one ever brought up, because when you compare players, you tend to do it individually. But another angle on the whole, like caps versus perks angle, right? Because they're obviously the contenders for like the Western GOAT and all that jazz, if we ever do the like hypotheticals. When we discuss like if you had them in a team, right? Normally you're talking about if you put them in like the best team possible. So, you know, it's like you just need to know individually how they play. If you ever do that thing of like, you know, which one do you start a franchise with? Tell you what, boys, that discussion got real interesting this last year or so, because suddenly it became like you don't just look at caps as out players and go, I'd start with caps definitely. Like, mate, perks is like ability to sort of set up a team structure and lead the team. That's looking more and more valuable as every year goes by, because I've always thought that actually about caps. It's something, by the way, a spoiler, that every star player, in my opinion, every like true real like guy who transcends his team, like the face of the team, superstar player, those players, there should almost be like a class where if you're one of those players, if you can only do it as in you can be like the best AD carry on your team, but all you do is you're just an AD carry. If you have no leadership qualities, I don't actually know if you should be considered like the best of the star players, because I've noticed the best star players in the carry roles, sort of the second they get a lead, it's like they become a mini shot caller instantly anyway, Dom, because they start knowing like, right, I know what I need to do now with my lead and my weapons to end the game. So essentially their comms just become like, how do I interface that with the team? Whereas I've actually noticed like people like Caps, I get the vibe like Caps is the guy where like I'm sure in his brain he knows what he's doing, but I don't know if he comms off that shit, mate. I've always got the vibe he just sort of just does whatever, and then people go, oh cool, he did like a play, and they tried to follow up or whatever. I never got the vibe he was like some super comm player in that sense.
Yeah, I haven't got that vibe either. I mean, I think a comparison point would be like Humanoid in the last year. It seemed like Humanoid was significant. Like now when you hear Mad Lions players talk, it's like, dude, this guy like ran our fucking mid game. Like, yeah. I mean, we started out with like, oh yeah, you know, Kaiser and Oyoya had like most of the shot calling responsibility, and you know, Humanoid was in there too. Like it was like they were all sharing it kind of in people's minds. And now you look at Mad Lions without Humanoid. What the fuck? Like, was he literally telling you everything? I mean, I don't think it was this severe.
I know. Like, it looks like it though. I agree.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Like they're making some. It seems like he was the guy that would be like, hey, you guys are inting right now. Like, stop doing this. Like that's actually really important. The guy that can call off plays, like as important as it is, it's to be able to find opportunities and like know where you can potentially pressure. Having the guy that can like pick out the couple times where that's actually super int and rate it in,
sure,
is so important to a team. It's harder to do because it's like making a call is not as hard as calling off somebody else's call, because there's that whole dynamic where it's like you don't know what they're seeing, and like you have to reevaluate the situation for themselves, and then also like there's just the like trust that you're gonna have for your teammates inherently and all that stuff. It seems like Humanoid was actually pretty good about like being like, hey, this is what we need to do to set up the map. This is how we're going to actually turn this lead into a victory. So I feel like that's something that we haven't seen really from Caps in season 8. He was kind of just like last time that he was by himself when he was without perks. He was just kind of like just so good mechanically. Like he was just shitting on people so hard. That it was, and like the rest of his team was also like, it's not like he was playing with bums, right? He was playing with
he's playing mega players. Yeah,
he was playing with.
I think almost his whole team was like all LEC at that point, wasn't it? You know, one of those teams.
Yeah. I mean, like what the worst player on his team was probably Broxer, right? Like that's
playing his best season ever.
Yeah, playing his best season ever.
Exactly.
That was the worst player. So it didn't seem like it was like he really needed to drag the team over the finish line in terms of telling the team how he needed to win the game. Like, what do you guys need to do to let me fucking carry the fucking game? That's really tough. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's really hard to see Caps in these last 2 seasons and not feel like there's some deficiencies there as a player. It can't just be that he got that much worse from 2019, 2020 to 2021, 2022. Like, to me, I don't feel like his skill individually is that much worse. I think it's everything. I think it's just other parts of the game being like highlighted that he probably didn't have to control. And when you're on all these super good teams, like you're on season 8 Fnatic, season 9 G2, season 10 G2. When you're on all these teams, it's really, really fucking difficult to develop these things because other players just have these qualities. You know, you're playing with people that are already going to cover those things. And I mean, it's like you might not appreciate them as much or feel like it's that crucial for you to learn because it's probably not worth it at the time if you're in season 10 G2 or season 9 G2 to be like, actually, I need to try to develop like, you know, these like leadership qualities in the late game. If you have the guy right there that's doing it, it's like you probably just keep on doing what you're doing, excel at that, and then, you know, just let the other people on your team do what they excel at as well. So I think it's a really difficult thing to do as a player is like, be improving at areas that you don't actually need to improve at the current moment to win so that you can be a better player in the future.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.